Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week. And if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. Today I'll be teaching how to make a light cardigan. For this cardi party, we're using the Suzette Stitch to keep things light. Front post for some clean edging, and we gave it a scoop bottom for a flattering fit. Speaking of, if you want to make something that'll flatter your fit, you're in the right place. We have hundreds of modern crochet patterns, with plenty more on the way, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now, it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 700 grams of yarn, and that's 1,300 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 6mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us a recent show that you've gotten into. Chief has recently introduced me to Big Brother, and I'm slightly obsessed. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is for size small, but you can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this cardigan started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Next, we're all going to grab our 6mm hook and start off by making an odd number chain that reaches from the base of our neck to about 2 inches past the tip of our shoulder. I need a total of 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 25. Now that we have our chain, we're going to do our first Suzette stitch row. So block off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. And now we're going to do our first Suzette stitch set, which is going to be a single crochet and double crochet into 1 chain. So into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, you're going to insert with 1 single crochet, and then into that same chain, a double crochet. That is our first Suzette stitch set. Let's do this again. After every set, we're always going to be skipping that following stitch, or chain in this case, since we're working into the base chain, because the double crochet that we just did counts as that stitch. If we work into the stitch right after, then we will be accidentally increasing. So we're going to skip that following stitch, into the one right after that, a single, so insert, pull through 2, and then into that same chain, a double crochet. So yarn over, insert, pull through 2, pull through 2. And we're going to continue this until we have 2 chains left. Let's just do one more. Skip the following stitch, into the next one, a single, and then into the same one, a double crochet. I'll meet you back when we have 2 chains left. We've made our way down with our Suzette stitches. We all should have 2 chains left, and now we're going to close off this row with a half double crochet into the last chain. So yarn over, skip that following chain, and then into the last one, insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. Our row 1 is now complete. Let's get started on our row 2, which is going to be pretty much the same thing as our row 1. So chain 1 and flip your work. Into the last stitch from our previous row, which should be the top of that half double crochet, we're going to do our first Suzette stitch set. So into that first stitch that we have, insert with a single, and then also with a double crochet. And then just like how we did our previous row, skip that following stitch, and then into the next, another set. So each of our Suzette stitch sets from now on will be worked into the previous row's single crochet to get the texture that we want. So since we're skipping that following stitch, we can tell that it's a double crochet because it's a little bit taller, and then into the stitch that we're going to work into, It's our single crochet, and we can tell that because it's a little bit shorter. So single and double into that same stitch. Continue on with our Suzette Stitch set until we have 2 stitches left. Our row 2 is nearly finished. We should all have 1, 2 stitches left. If you can't find that second stitch, we should have that extra one. It might just be a little bit tucked underneath, so you may need to flip your work over, but it will be there. And now, just like our previous row, we're going to half double crochet into the last stitch. So yarn over, skip that second to last stitch, and then into the last, 1 half double crochet. And that is pretty much it. We're going to continue to repeat our previous row until we get the length of the piece that we want, right until we want it to start to curve. So placing the first row at the top of your shoulder, and the last row wherever you want it to curve, keeping in mind that we do have a curved portion, so it will be a little bit longer. And then I will meet you back. I want mine to start to curve right at about my hips, so I'll meet you back around there. I am back, and the length of my front panel is finished. Now we're going to start working on the decrease portion. I have a total of 46 rows, and my length is 17 inches or 43 centimeters. And what we're going to do from here is do our Suzette stitch until we have 4 stitches left. I've made my way down, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches left. Now we're going to close off this row with a decrease of 3 half double crochets. So yarn over, skip that following stitch or the 4th to last, into that following or the 3rd to last, pull through, into that 2nd to last, pull through, and then into that last stitch, pull through. When we have those 5 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 5. Now we're going to be decreasing into every other row, so from here just chain 1, flip our work, and then do our Suzette stitch all the way back down. From there it's going to be a repeat of those 2 rows, so when we work our way back down, start our following Suzette stitch row, leaving the last 4 stitches, and then I'll meet you back just once more. Our first decrease row is finished. I made my way down with my following Suzette stitch row with no increases and no decreases, and then worked my way back up to the end of my following row, and I should have 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches left. Now, just like our previous decrease row, we're going to close off this row with a decrease of 3 half double crochets. Yarn over, skip that following stitch into the stitch right after, pull through, into the one right after that, pull through, and then into the last stitch into the row, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 5 of those loops. From here, repeat our 2 previous rows until we get a total length that we'd like for this cardigan to be. Now I'm going to continue this decrease into every other row until mine comes to a complete point. But if you don't want yours to come to a complete point, that's completely fine as well. Either way, I will meet you back when we have this front panel all finished up. The entirety of my front panel is all finished. I have a total of 69 rows, and my length, all the way down to the point that I have, is 25 inches or 64 centimeters. And when we have one finished, we're going to be making one more panel exactly the same way. So we are going to be making the same chain that we made for our first front panel, so 25 for me. And then we're going to do our Suzette stitch for the same amount of rows that we did until we need to start doing our decrease. Do the decrease until we have the same amount of total rows, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I'll meet you back so that we can do a single crochet row along the length of our front panel. Now that we have 2 front panels all finished up, we're going to get started on our single crochet row along the outer edge. Now the outer edge is going to be the longest side of our front panel, so not the side that has our decrease curve. We're going to insert our hook into that top corner stitch, insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and from here we're going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. So let's get this started. This is my first side row right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert my hook in through there. And since we should have a tail end, I'm going to place that over my hook and then single crochet around everything. And now that tail end is woven in as we go. Let's do the next side row. This one is mine right here. I'm going to insert my hook in through that top loop with 1 single crochet and then into that same top loop with a second single crochet. And that is what we're going to do all the way down. Let's do this one more time. Finding our next side row, I'm going to insert in through that top loop with 1 single crochet and then in through our following side row, insert in through that top loop with 2 single crochets. So there's 1, there's 2, and then continue this all the way down. When we don't have any more side rows left to work into, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat on the other front panel. We have just finished up single crocheting along the outer edges of our 2 front panels. Now we're going to get started on our back panel, and I already have mine done, so I'm just going to talk you guys through it because it's super duper simple. So our back panel is going to be a solid Suzette stitch panel for the same amount of total rows that we have for the front panel. Now, some really quick tips that I have for the back panel. We're going to want to make sure that the total amount of base chains that we make for our back panel is more than the amount of base chains that we made for the front panel combined, since we made 2 of them. So just as an example, for one front panel, I made a total chain of 25. The next one, I also made 25 since they're the same, so 25 plus 25 is 50. I wanted to make sure that the total amount of chains that I made for my back panel is more than 50. Now, it doesn't need to be a certain amount of numbers before, we just want to make sure that we have enough space for a little neck scoop. Now, the base chain is going to be made from 2 inches past the tip of our shoulder, across our back, to 2 inches past the tip of our other shoulder. So I made a total chain of 63, and this length is 18.5 inches or 47 centimeters. And the total amount of rows that I made for my front panels is 69 rows. So for my back panel, I made 69 rows as well with no increases and no decreases. So I just have a really solid panel. And once we have the entirety of our back panel finished up, I will meet you back just to remind you that we're going to need to single crochet along the edges as well. So the entirety of my back panel is finished up. I have the same amount of rows as my front panel, so 69 rows. I did do a chain up of 1 and cut, and now we're just going to single crochet along the outer edges so that it's easier to seam. So start by inserting your hook into the top corner stitch. We're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and just like how we did the front panel, we're going to be alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. Now, starting with our first side row, this is mine right here. I'm going to insert my hook in through that top loop, place my tail in over my hook, and do 1 single crochet. And through my following side row, I'm going to insert my hook into that top loop and insert with 2 single crochets. So there's 1, there's 2, and continue this until we don't have any more side rows left to work into. When we don't have any more, we're going to do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat this on the other side of the back panel. So my single crochet row along the edge of my back panel along both sides are finished. Now we're going to seam the shoulder of the front and back panel together. So start by placing our front panel on top of our back panel, making sure that the longer end is along the outside because remember, we want it to curve outwards. From there, we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. We are going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now this is going to be a single crochet seam, so let's all start by finding that first stitch into the front panel, insert your hook, first stitch into the back panel, which is actually a chain, insert your hook, and then single crochet. Let's do this again. We're going to find that next stitch into the front panel, insert your hook, next stitch into the back panel, insert your hook, and single crochet, and that is it. We're going to continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into the front panel. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat on the other side. So now that our shoulders are seamed along both sides, we're going to get started on seaming the sides. We are first going to want to insert our stitch marker into any stitch from the top that is in multiples of 3, right where we want our sleeve to be. Now I don't want my sleeve to be too big, so I've inserted my stitch marker into the 27th stitch from the top, and that's just about 7 inches or 18 centimeters. But if you'd like a wider sleeve, feel free to insert your stitch marker lower, or if you want a skinnier sleeve, feel free to insert your stitch marker higher. We just want to make sure that it can fit nicely around our arm. And from here, we're going to get started on seaming our bottom. So first things first, let's make sure that our work is still flipped wrong side out, meaning the seam that we have for the shoulder is along the outside, and then we're going to be inserting our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. We are going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and we're now going to do a single crochet seam, so the same seam that we did for the shoulders. Let's all start by inserting our hook into that first stitch into the front panel, into that first stitch into the back panel, and then single crochet around everything. Once more, into that next stitch into the front panel, next stitch into the back panel, and single crochet around everything again. And continue this until we reach our stitch marker. When we do, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat on the other side. So now that everything is seamed together, we're going to get started with our sleeve. So first things first, we're going to flip our work right side out, meaning all of the seams that we have are now going to be along the inside. And then we're going to be inserting our hook into the stitch that we have that's nearest to our side seam. Then right after that, we're going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our sleeve to be, and it needs to end on an odd number because we're going to be doing Suzette stitches again. Now I need a total of 13.5 inches or 34 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 55, but if you'd like a 3/4 length sleeve or shorter, go ahead and adjust it right here. And now that we have our chain, our first row is going to be a Suzette stitch row. So just do our Suzette stitches, making our way all the way down until we have 2 chains left. We've made our way all the way down with our Suzette stitches. We should have 1, 2 chains left, and we're going to half double crochet into that last chain to close off this row. So pretty much the same way that we've been closing off all the other rows. From here, we're going to need to connect it into the base. So we're going to count up the next 2 available stitches. Here's 1, here's 2. Into that second stitch into the base, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. And that slip stitch doesn't count as a stitch, that is just to connect our first row. Now we do need to work our way up to the following row, so we're going to slip stitch up that following stitch again into the base. That still doesn't count as a stitch, and we're going to flip our work. And now that our work is flipped, we are going to do our Suzette stitch row all the way back down, with no increases and no decreases, so pretty simple. Just to do the first one, we're going to find that first stitch into our previous row, which should be that top of that half double crochet, not the 2 slip stitches that we just did. And insert with our first Suzette stitch, and continue this until we have 2 stitches left. When we have those 2 stitches, half double crochet into that last stitch, chain 1, flip our work, and then repeat our Suzette stitch, making our way all the way back down, ending the row with a half double crochet, so pretty much the same way that we just did. I'll meet you back when we have our 3rd row finished, and then we can connect it into the base together once more. Now our row 3 is finished. We made sure to close off the row with a half double crochet into that last stitch, and now we're going to connect it into the base. It's going to be done the same way that we connected our previous rows, so just as a refresher, working our way into the base, we're going to count up 1, 2 stitches. Into that second stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch to close off our odd number row, and then to work our way up to our next even number row, which right now is our 4th row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base, and flip our work. And then from there, repeat. We're going to continue to repeat these 2 previous rows with no increases and no decreases, making our way all the way around our armhole. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, I will meet you back so that we can seam everything together. So I am back and I have made my way all the way around. We don't have any more stitches left to work into the base, so now we're ready to seam everything together. And this is going to be a single crochet seam, so let's all make sure that our work is flipped wrong side out. Next, we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. We're going to pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure. And now just to do the first one, since we already know how to do this, we're going to find that first available stitch into the front panel, insert your hook in through there, find that next available stitch into the back panel, and single crochet. And we're going to continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut. So now that our sleeve is all seamed up, we're ready to get started on our cuff. So we're going to start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, and then we're going to be inserting our hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the bottom of our sleeve. We are then going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and from here we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every side row. So start by finding that first available side row that we have. This is mine right here. I'm going to insert my hook in through there and place my tail end over my hook because I'd like to weave in my tail ends as I go, and then single crochet around everything. Let's do the next one. Find our following side row, which this is mine right here. I'm going to find that top loop and single crochet. That's it. We're going to continue to put 1 single crochet into every side row that we have. We should have the same amount of single crochets as side rows that we made. And then we're going to slip stitch into that chain space. Now a really quick tip, this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this cuff can get. So make sure you try it on once the single crochet row is finished. If it's a little too tight, redo some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, redo some stitches with a tighter grip. Now that our single crochet row is finished, we're going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our cuff to be. Now I'd like for this cuff to be pretty short, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 6, and that's just about 1.5 inches or 3 centimeters. Now that we have our chain, our first row is going to be a single crochet row. So block off that last chain, do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a single crochet. So insert with 1 single crochet and put 1 single crochet into every chain. Now that we have our single crochet row, we're going to slip stitch it into the base. So find that next stitch into the base, insert, yarn over, and pull through everything on our hook. That slip stitch doesn't count as a stitch, that's just to connect it, and we do need to work our way up to our following row, so slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base. That slip stitch also doesn't count as a stitch, and we're going to flip our work. Now the rest of our rows are going to be front post single crochets to get a really pretty ribbing. So we're all going to start by finding that first stitch from our previous row, making sure that we're not looking in through those slip stitches that we did, and we're going to find the body of that single crochet. So this is mine right here, and we're going to insert our hook underneath the gap along the right side, bring our hook underneath our work, so underneath that body, and then through the other side of that same single crochet. And then from here, we're going to single crochet per usual, so yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. That is our first front post single crochet. Let's do another. Find the body of our following single crochet, insert your hook in through the right side of that stitch, bring your hook underneath the body of that stitch and through the other side. And then single crochet per usual. Let's just do one more. Find our following single crochet, insert your hook underneath, through the other side, and single crochet. And we're going to continue this until we reach the end of the row. So I've just put 1 front post single crochet into every stitch. And we should have the same amount of stitches as chains that we made. So just to count mine out with you, I made a chain 6, and altogether I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches. And since we're along the edge, we're going to single crochet into the last stitch from our previous row, and that's just to keep the edge blunt. So just find the top of that last stitch, insert your hook, and single crochet. Now that's not going to count as a stitch, that's just to close off the edge. From here we're going to chain 1 and flip our work. Now we're going to do front post single crochets back down. So making sure that we're looking at the second single crochet that we have, not the one along the outer edge, because we need that to keep our work blunt. We're going to find that second single crochet, and then just like per usual, insert your hook underneath, through the other side with a front post single, and then once more, finding our following single, insert your hook underneath, through the other side, and then single crochet. And continue putting 1 front post single crochet into every stitch. And now that we're at the end of the row, we're going to slip stitch it into the base. So finding that next stitch into our base, we're going to slip stitch into there to close off our row 3 or any odd number row. And then to work our way up to the following row, just find that next stitch into the base, slip stitch into there, flip our work, and then repeat. So put 1 front post single crochet into every stitch, and then for every even number, we're going to close our row off with an extra single crochet that's not going to count as a stitch. That's just to keep the edge blunt. And that's it. We're going to continue on with our front post single crochet rows with no increases and no decreases until we don't have any stitches left to work into. And then I will meet you back to seam it all together. So I've made my way all the way around with my cuff. I don't have any more stitches left to work into the base, so now we're just going to seam it together, and this is going to be a single crochet seam. But for this one, we want the ribbing to be seamed because it'll look like all these other ribbing rows that we have. So we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out now. Then we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Next, we're going to yarn over, pull through everything on our hook, and this is going to be the same seam, so let's do this again. Find that first stitch into the front panel, insert your hook, first stitch into the back panel, insert your hook, and then single crochet it together, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and when we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat everything we just did here on the other side. So now that our sleeves and cuffs are finished, we're now going to finish this piece off with our front band. So we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, and we're looking at the back, and we're going to insert our hook into any one of the stitches that we have along the top of the back panel. We're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, and we're going to start with a single crochet row. So pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now along the top of the back, we should have just some regular stitches to work into, so go ahead and put 1 single crochet into every stitch, and then I will meet you back once we reach our shoulder seam. So now that we've single crocheted over to our shoulder seam, we're now going to work our way down the front panel, alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. So we should already know how to do this, so let's just do the first set together. Let's all start by finding our first side row, which this is mine right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert my hook in through there with 1 single crochet, and then in through my following side row, insert my hook in through there with 2 single crochets. So there's 1, and then there's 2, and then that's it. Going down the front panel, we're going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochet into every side row, and we're continuing our single crochet all the way around. So 1 single crochet into every stitch along the bottom of the back panel, and then working our way up the rest of the front panel. Again, alternate between 1 to 2 single crochet into every side row. We're going to continue that, making our way all the way up and over. Once we reach our chain space, we're going to slip stitch into there, and then I will meet you back. So our single crochet row along the entirety of our piece is all finished up, and now we're going to do our band. So this is going to be done exactly the same way as our cuff. Let's all start off by making a chain the length that we'd like for our band to be, and I'd like for mine to be a little bit shorter, so about 1 inch or 3 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 4. Now that we have our chain, let's block off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's just our turning chain. And put 1 single crochet into every chain, starting from that chain that we blocked off with a second chain from our hook. And now that we've put 1 single crochet into every chain, we're going to connect it into the base. So just as a refresher, find that next stitch into the base, slip stitch it into there to close off our row 1, and then to work our way up to our following row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base, and flip our work. And now we're going to be doing front post single crochets. So just to be doing our following row together, find the first single crochet from our previous row, insert your hook underneath the body of that single crochet, and do 1 front post single crochet, and continue putting 1 front post single crochet into every stitch. Now that we're at the end of our even number row, we're going to single crochet into the last stitch from our previous row to make sure that we maintain that blunt end, chain 1, flip our work, and then do our front post single crochets all the way back down and connecting it into the base the same way that we did here and for the cuff as well. Now we're going to continue this, making our way all the way up and around, and I'll meet you back when we don't have any more stitches left to seam it all together. So we've just made our way all the way around with our band. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to do another single crochet seam along the outside of our work, just like how we did for our cuff. So let's all make sure that our work is flipped right side out. So we're all going to start by inserting our hook into the first stitch into the front panel, and also into the first stitch into the back panel, and single crochet. So the same seam that we did. And that is it. We're going to continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut. And now that our band is all seamed up, we are done. Last thing we're going to have to do is weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye!